I got the carbs off. When you take it off, there's little drain holes on each one of the carbs. You want to just back that screw out, not take it all the way out, just back it out and let each carb drain into a container. And then once you do that, then you want to pull it off the bike. Otherwise, you get it on the bench and it spills gas all over the place. But you can see here's all the brass inside of it. I've already cleaned these carbs a bunch of times, so all the brass is pretty shiny. But that's your air mixture screw, that's your pilot jet, that's your main jet, and there's like I think it's called an emulsifier underneath it. It just mixes gas and air. And then there's your needle and there's your floats. So I'll go ahead and start taking it apart and just kind of go over what you need to clean on them. Alright, the first thing I'm going to do is, I guess, put it in a pan, because you use carb cleaner and you want to spray down all the passages, and it always sprays all over the place. And be sure to wear glasses, because I always get it in my eyes every single time I do this, so I've kind of just learned that you got to put glasses on when you do this. But you see these two passages on here? One of them's for the main jet, one's for the pilot jet. So I just go ahead and put the can in carb cleaner, just point the little nozzle in there, and then spray. And I'll just kind of demonstrate it, but that little nozzle goes in the hole, and then you just spray it. Here. And you can see that was the main jet. It sprays out. Then I'll do the pilot jet. See, it's coming out of the pilot jet. It was kind of clogged because it wasn't coming out at first, but I guess it broke loose of whatever was in there. And I'm just going to repeat that on all the carbs. Alright, I went through and I cleaned out all the passages. A bunch of rusty gasoline came out of a few of them, so they were definitely, I guess, kind of clogged up by stuff. And then I went ahead and just sprayed underneath all the floats to kind of get all that rusty gas out. Now I'm going to go ahead and take out the idle screws and then clean in there, make sure all that's clean. Alright, now I have every single one of them out. Whenever you do it, each one of them will have the little screw and then a spring, and then underneath that spring there's a little spacer. Underneath that spacer is an O-ring. Most of the time the spacer and O-ring, or just the O-ring, gets stuck down in the little holes, so you have to use like a little dental pick to pull them out. But just be sure that you get them out. And then I'd recommend replacing the O-rings once you clean them out. And now I'll just spray some carb cleaner down there and make sure that those are cleaned out. Alright, I sprayed them down. Once they're clean, you should see carb cleaner come out of the, I guess, slow jet hole. I'll show you this left hole. That's the slow jet hole. You want to see carb cleaner come out of that once you do it. And you can also use like compressed air for this, but carb cleaner helps like break down anything that's in there. Now I'll go ahead and take out the main jet and clean that out. And I pulled those out, and you can see your needle goes right through there, so don't go scraping around in there. Wait till you have the needles out, or you can, there's your idle screw over here, you can screw that all the way and that will open up your slides and your needle will be lifted out of there for you to clean it. And there's also a little seat, your needle seat or guide in there. You're not going to be able to really tell, but I guess if I tilt it up, it sits at the bottom of the needle. You can see it from the inside, but that's in there. You can pop that out and replace it if you want, or you can just clean it up and put them back in. But here's the main jets. They sit inside the emulsifier tube, and that's the emulsifier tube. You want to look, so we'll focus, you want to look, it has little tiny holes in it. You want to make sure all of those are cleaned, and then that big hole on the end, you want to be able to look through it. Yeah, you can kind of tell, look through it and see light on the end. Make sure they're clean. The nice thing about, like, I guess modifying your bike is the jets get bigger every time you tune it, so they don't ever get clogged once they get big enough. But also another thing is you start getting really used to taking the carbs apart and cleaning them once you modify it, because you have to, I guess, trial and error a few times before you get the jets right. But after this, normally you would take out the pilot jets. I'll kind of show you how you do it, but pretty much you put channel locks on there, and you get like a piece of leather or something so you're not scratching up your pilot jets. But you wrap a piece of leather around it, and then you put channel locks on it, and you pull back, straight back, and you can kind of give it a little bit of a wiggle, but you just want to pull straight back. And if you pull back hard enough, they will come out. They're just press fitted in there. Most people don't take them out. You don't have to, but I've had some that were pretty, I guess, dirty, and they needed to be pulled out. So I guess that's how you pull it out. And then once you pull it out, I may have some that I can show you in a little bit, but they have a little tiny hole through them, and then they have little holes on the end of it, and you just basically spray carb cleaner through there till you get them cleaned up. And they do make aftermarket ones from, actually all these jets, they make aftermarket ones from Jets R Us. So if you need any jets, you can just buy them there, and I think they're like the cheapest place you can get them from. But anyways, after this, there's a little pin in here that holds in the floats, and you want to hit that out one direction and then pull the floats out, and the needle will be sitting on it. So I'll go ahead and do that. Alright, I found some pilot jets that I could show you, but you can see they have little holes on here, and then the hole looks pretty big right there, and I guess it looks decent size right there, but it necks down and gets really narrow right around the center right there. So you just gotta keep spraying carb cleaner. Sometimes they're really dirty, and you have to, what I do is I get like a piece of wire, and I strip the wire and just take one strand of the wire, and I just try to like push anything out. You don't really want to run the wire back and forth through here because it widens the hole and it changes your, I guess, jet size. So you just kind of want to use the wire to push out anything. But once it's pushed out, then I guess just stop right there and spray carb cleaner until the rest gets out. Got the floats off, and if you look, there's holes right here and here. This style carb is like a 77 CB550 carb. I think it's a PD46. So the vents are different on like the years and the style of carbs, but that's how this one's set up. And I went ahead and I sprayed carb cleaner in there to clear the vents out, because every carb I've had, for some reason the vents are clogged up, but I went ahead and cleaned those out. And then if you look in, get some light in there, you can see inside that seat, or that needle seat, and it's pretty shiny in there. I don't know if you can tell, probably not, but all of these or any of the carbs I've had like 3 sets of carbs so far. All of them, the seats in them are really dirty, so it's always leaked. And I always hear people say that these old bikes, that the carbs will always leak gas out of them when you leave it sitting, so just turn the petcock off. But what I do is I grab like a little Q-tip, or Q-tip that has just cotton on the tip, and then I take some polishing compound and I stick it on the tip of that and run it in the drill in there, and it polishes out the bottom of that seat, so it makes it shiny and stuff, and it cleans it real good, and that gives the needle just a little surface to sit on. And so the whole time I've had these carbs on the bike, I've never had the bike leak whenever it sits. And that also has to do with your float height adjustment, which I'll talk about after this. But anyways, that's how you clean the needle seat. You just polish it with like a Q-tip or something, and that's, you can see in there pretty good. It's pretty shiny. But anyways, here's the floats, and you can see right there, that's the little needle. And if you look on it, you can see a little, here, I'll check it, never mind, here, I'll go ahead and skip to whenever I find it. Alright, I found it, and I just wanted to show you right there around it. You can kind of see a ring around the tip of it where it seats. This one looks fine, like I could reuse it, But if you look at yours and it's like divoted in around that ring, then you need to replace them. Once they've kind of gotten divoted in, then they don't, or a groove, I guess would be a better word for it. Once you get a groove around it, then they need to be replaced because they don't seat as well. I'm going ahead and replacing these. These are like eBay ones, just with like the cheap eBay carb rebuild set, and those kits are pretty, I guess, junk. Now every time I rebuild them, which I guess you shouldn't have to rebuild it more than once, but anytime I take the carbs off and tune them, I go ahead and like rebuild them again. But anytime I rebuild them, I just have a Viton O-ring set, and I just put Viton O-rings in there. And once you get a set that has a bunch of different sizes, you can just do that instead of buying rebuild kits. And then I just source out the Honda needle jets, and I guess there's like part number and stuff for if you have a this style carb. But so I'm going ahead and replacing them with the Honda ones, because the eBay ones, you pretty much have to put the carbs on a bench. I usually like bolt the manifold to a piece of wood to hold them level, and then you run clear gas line from the bottom of the carb up, and you just leave the float bills open, or the drain screws right there open, and you have that gas line loop back up around. That's just clear fuel line, and that tells you where your float height's at, where the gas level is in the carbs, and you pretty much have to do that to get all the needles adjusted, because by the book it tells you how to adjust the float height, but it doesn't work on the cheap eBay needles. But sounds like a Harley sitting there just revving his engine while it's parked. Typical. But I'll go ahead and I will show you how to set the float height, because I pretty much have these carbs completely cleaned. Alright, I'm starting to put stuff together. Here, I'll turn that down. I'm starting to put stuff together, and I'm just going to say there's a little rod that goes through here. I've already showed it. But sometimes whenever you go to put them back in, they just slide in. They're super loose in there. If that's the case, you can take that little rod, and just on the very end of it, you can take a hammer and smash it just so it's a little ovaled, and then hit it back in, and that will keep it from falling out. I've had to do it on these ones. You just want it to be in there where it's snug. You don't really want it to be in there where you have to like bang it in with a hammer. But yeah, I just like lay it on a piece of metal and just tap it so it's a little ovaled, and then stick it in there, and that keeps it in. And then also when you're tightening down these little emulsifier tubes, you want to like just, I guess, snug it down. You don't really want to tighten it that much because it's brass, and if you tighten it too much, then the holes will get ovaled out. So that's just one thing. And then also whenever you put in the idle screws, you put them in, you back them out like 2 turns out. And I'm pretty sure the manual tells you to do it 2 turns out, but I can look at it if I'm wrong. I'll correct myself. On mine, I just back them out like 1 turn, because I have bigger pilot jets, so it runs a little rich. So I screw them in a little further than stock. Alright, I got everything together, and it does say right there that the idle mixture screw is 1.5 to 2 turns out. And then this is your float adjustment. That's what I was talking about with the clear fuel line. You just have clear fuel line, and that tells you your gas mixture. But whenever you do the fuel line test, it says for the CB550s, which it's like CB550s up to, I guess, 1976. The float height is 22 millimeters. And then 1977 and 78, they use the PD46 carbs, and their float height, I think, is 12.5 millimeters. I'll have to double check that. But to do the float height, you kind of like, I guess, set the carbs up so they're just, I don't know, kind of just resting, just kind of like barely angled, so that the floats just start to touch the needles. And then you take a like ruler or something, and you measure that up to the top of the flat part of the floats, and that will give you your measurement. So in this, I'll put it on there and then measure it there, and it'll be 12.5 millimeters. Alright, so I just checked, and the float height should be on the PD46 carbs. Some say 12.5, some say 14.5, but I think whenever I did mine, I just did them at like 14. And then now that I'm running, now that I've upgraded it, I run the float height a little lower so there's more gas in the bowls, which means that it could overflow a little easier, but it doesn't really matter because when you're getting on it and it requires more gas, you don't really want the bowls, I guess, running lower. So I usually set mine at about like 13. I only have, I don't know, I can only measure inches, so I just do, I think, about half an inch, and that seems to always work. So I'll go ahead and set them. I'll show you how to do it. Just gotta set them up. Alright, when I do it, I lift them up so they're level, and I just slowly lay them back down so that they just slowly lay back down on the needle. And then I go ahead and measure from the base to the top where it's flat. And if you need to lower the float level or raise it, there's that metal little clip that the jet needle sits on, and you just bend that in the direction you need it to go to like raise it or lower it. And I just barely bend it and check it again, and you just do that for each one until they're all at the right, I guess, measurement. So I'll go ahead and do mine. I just did the first carb. Kind of went back and forth with it a little bit, getting it to go, but I'll show you what I'm talking about. I set this like right at the tip, and then you can see it's perfectly flat with it. So that shows that the float height is at the right spot. And then you just repeat that on all of them, and then you're pretty much done with this, and you just bolt up the bowls and you put it back on the bike. Alright, I'm cleaning the bowls out because you just want to get everything really clean on the carbs. And I was just going to show you, I'm running some like cheap pod filters, and this is why people don't tell you to run pod filters, because you look in there and yeah, some of it's rust from the tank, but a lot of that's just dirt that's been sucked up from the pod filters, and it mixes with the gas and then gets collected in the bottom. So it shows you how much the pod filters filter, because they can't even filter dirt in the air. So before you just pick up a cheap set, it's kind of worth it. Just go ahead and get more expensive ones, because your carbs will just keep getting clogged. I need to go ahead and order some better ones, but I'll just run this for now and probably go ahead and order some better filters tonight.